like to thank you all for your introduction. I would like to thank, of course, Philip and Annabelle, who were instrumental in putting the evening together. And may I congratulate you on such a successful evening, I have to say, of Rotary clubs that I have addressed in one. I suppose it is obvious that my invitation here has something to do with the fact that I filed my candidacy for the vice presidency for the May elections of this year. And all my prayers and all my discernment have led me to this major decision and helped me realize that this is precisely the right call for this moment. And it is in my conscience and the right call for public service, which I must listen to and heed. Sa Amerika, ang Vice Presidente sa kanyang paghihintay ay tumatayo bilang ex officio Senate President. Dito naman sa Pilipinas, iba. Dahil walang anuman ex officio function ang mga Vice President. The active and extra role that is to be played by the Vice President depends on the pleasure, discretion, and appointing power of the President. So the Constitution allows that the Vice President be appointed as a cabinet member. And herein lies the greatest potential of a Vice President to make the most of his tenure as a national official and public servant of the people. The measure of this public service will be defined by the extent that he will be trusted and by the active government roles which will be entrusted to him, essentially, by the President. I believe that the key here is the Vice President's openness and willing to work for and with his President. And I am often asked, sinasabi, paano gagawin mo, Mr. kung mahalal kang Vice President, pero hindi naman kapartido mo ang iyong Pangulo? Tingnan natin. Sabi ko, titignan natin. Si Mayor Duterte, matalik kong kaibigan, siguro more than 20 years na. Si Jojo Binay comes from the north, so we are natural allies. Si Miriam is my president, is my running mate. Si Marojas is also a good friend, and beyond that, he is the cousin of my wife. And Grace is my sister, so no problem. Immediately, I lay claim to being the best positioned Vice President that we have. Alam mo, kasi yung kanina ng chismis na magkapatid daw ko kami, sabi ko, kakarinig ko na yun. So that is exactly what is happening. But levity aside, I am asked that question, and I said, what will you do as Vice President? And I always say, the first thing that I will do when elected Vice President is to go to my President and to say, I am here to support you, and what in your view would be the best way that I could do that. Because it is important that this partnership be a real partnership. If we are to succeed, if we are going to bring a better life to our people. By the time that we will swear our respective oaths and assume our respective offices, every bit and vestige of politics should have already ceased as we buckle down for day one of public service to the entire nation. Throughout our history, we have witnessed the spectacle of Vice Presidents having been integrated and inducted into the President's family. Recently, we have seen the likes of, for example, Vice President Laurel, who was the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Era, when he was Vice President, was the head of the Presidential Anti-Crime Commission. Vice President GMA, in her time, was the DSWD Secretary. And Noli De Castro, as Vice President, and also now Vice President Binay, had HUDSI. Our past vice presidents have shown and proven that the vice presidency as intended and envisioned by our Constitution could truly be a noble, meaningful, and worthwhile function. And this again, would depend upon the partnership that we forge together with not only the President, but the entire official family of the administration. If and when I become Vice President, my platform of public service will be defined not by hopeful patience or wishful thinking, but rather of unity, trust, and cooperation. I will be a team player and a role player. The President will be assured of my cooperation and my support for the envisioned programs of his government and to help in uniting our nation and rallying them behind the President and the policies which this administration will undertake. We must promote and spread the message of hope to the entire Filipino people and the glad tidings of goodwill and comity to the international community. Lalo na ngayon, marami at malala ang problema ng ating bansa. The President definitely needs all the help he or she can get from able, willing, trustworthy, and competent individuals around him. On the other hand, I shall also act as a fiscalizer of sorts and will freely but diplomatically speak my mind about important public issues, as well as about the shortcomings, the weaknesses, the lack in the delivery of service of government. Not so much for the sake of criticism or fault finding, but more with a view to improve the public service that we provide to our people. In simple terms, my vision of our country is one that can overcome its economic and social challenges by drawing on our own strengths and drawing upon our unity. It is a vision that of a Philippines that is prosperous, rich in opportunity, and home to happy, morally upright, and productive citizens whose lives are meaningful because theirs is a just society, because theirs is a nation that will be and has become great again. It is a daunting task. A task so daunting it has continually remained a puzzling mystery and has challenged even the greatest of our leaders through history. Today, it is saddening to note that 26% of the Filipino people are poor. 11% live in extreme poverty. And further compounding our problem is the inequality that pervades our society now. We hear a great deal about how wealthy the Philippines is becoming, about the riches that are coming into the Philippines. But as we go around the countryside, as we talk to ordinary people, that wealth is not being properly distributed so as to allow each of our citizens to feel and to enjoy the benefits of that progress or that growth that we often hear about. Our unemployment rate remains at the high 6.6%. Here in Metro Manila, that figure is 7.2%, a figure that translates to 3 million Filipinos who are without jobs. Besides that, 17% consider themselves underemployed. Hence, this this actual lack of opportunities brings us the rather shocking statistic. It is a statistic that I uncovered maybe a couple of months ago, and I could not quite believe that it was true. I checked it and rechecked it. But 5,000 of our countrymen leave the country for work abroad. Not every year, not every month, but 5,000 leave the Philippines every single day. And that, I think, best illustrates how severe the problem of unemployment is. How we see that we no longer can provide the jobs, the decent jobs. We cannot provide the livelihood that people need for them to be able to support themselves, their families, and to be able to plan for the future. And it is a sad effect of that brain drain that the best of Filipinos are applying their industry, applying their talent, applying their knowledge and skills, not for the progress of the Philippines, but to help other countries. It is something that it is saddening, and it is something it is a great disadvantage to the Philippines. And that is why, beyond the fact that we cannot provide the jobs that our people need, we furthermore are losing out on the greatness of the Filipino worker to help the building of our nation here in the Philippines. Considering the poverty and the social inequality and injustice that we sometimes see pervading our society, it seems that we as a collective people are the ones responsible for driving out our very own countrymen to work in other countries. It is in the face and on the way to these social ills and obvious government inadequacy and failure that I re-echo a continuing call to civil society and enlist your continuing commitment and tap into your natural spirit of compassion and volunteerism. True to the mandate of the Constitution, we recognize the indispensable role of people's organizations, like your organization, the Rotary Club, in the higher ideal of nation building and in the rudimentary task of diagnosing and alleviating the ills of our society and the pitiable conditions of our less fortunate brothers and sisters. For example, in recognition of the inherent social responsibility and ground-level operations of NGOs and people's organizations, our government has installed mechanisms by which they are tapped as agents of government in making sure that public funds are pumped and cascaded down to the thinnest capillaries of society. I firmly believe that genuine, established, tried and tested people's organizations like yours are most qualified and worthy to be entrusted with even more active, more accountable, and larger roles that are in partnership with the government. They should not merely be given passive, much less token roles, not just to be left to your own devices, but in the hope that at some serendipitous point, somewhere along the way, their programs and priorities are able to meet and align with those of government for the good of the public. Government's clarion call to legitimate organizations should not just be sounded off in times of need, and God forbid, only during times of national emergencies or calamity. Your organizations, NGOs, by whatever name, are there on the sidelines all along. Like our image, perhaps, of the Vice President. They have been patiently waiting in the wings, making their presence felt in the countryside where it matters most. Nakapaligod at naglilibot sa buong bansa nang hindi man lang natin nalalaman. For almost a century, Rotary clubs have regularly proven themselves and have stamped in the psyche of Filipinos your trademark, concrete, and reliable public service to the community. And this is done without a great deal of fanfare, without a great deal of public accolade, but quietly and with a compassion that drives and motivates you. You can rest assured that as if elected Vice President, my leadership will be characterized by drawing upon the collective strength of a united nation. I think that this is a very important point. We look upon the problems that our nation faces, and we try to think up of the solutions. And we see that there are many possible ways that we can alleviate those problems. But the one thing that we must achieve before we can bring those solutions to the fore, before we can bring those solutions to our people, is we must achieve a unity in our people. It is something that we have found has grown weaker over the past years. And that has been, our unity has been sacrificed at the altar of politics. And that is a development that has been so counterproductive. That despite the talent, despite the genius of Filipinos, as recognized by many countries and by big employers in our OFWs, that cannot seem to bring the solutions, to bring that progress, to bring the changes that are necessary. And I believe the reason is that lack of unity. And it is time that we return to that lack of, we remove that lack of unity, and we return to the idea that we Filipinos can only depend upon ourselves. And we Filipinos must be one if we are to achieve the progress that we all dream for our people and for our country. Isa sa aking pinanghawakan at pambato at alas sa aking kandidatura bilang Vice Presidente ay ang aking pinagsamang karanasan hindi lamang sa Kongreso, kundi sa lokal na pamahalaan bilang local executive noon sa aming lalawigan ng Ilocos. Still, the primary constitutional function that is exercised by a Vice President is to be ready in case the President is unable to fulfill their duties. And that in that regard, I feel that my experience both in local government, both as a chief executive, both and as a legislator, and I believe it is only the judiciary, is the only department of government in which I have not been part of, has equipped me well to be able to face the challenges to lead and in any capacity. And that is something that I feel has been hard-earned and a great deal of it came from many years of experience and many years of having to show to the people exactly what you can achieve. In local government especially, it is not sufficient that you make promises. It is not sufficient that you make beautiful speeches. In local government, you say, this is what we are going to do. And inevitably, a few days, weeks, months down the road, your people will come. Have you done what you have actually promised us? Have you actually achieved what you said you would? And they will know if you have done it or not. And that very rigorous test is the best training possible for any kind of leadership role in government, and for that matter, outside of government. Ngunit bilang miyembro ng Kongreso sa Kamara de Representante at sa Senado, nakita ko ang pagbubuga ng ating pambansang patakaran at polisiya at mga mahalagang batas. Bilang dating pinuno ng lokal na pamahalaan, alam ko kung paano pinapatakbo ang isang LGU at kung ano ang mga problemang hinaharap ng mga local communities. Personal kong nakita at naranasan kung ano ang nangyari sa baba, on the ground, at the grassroots level, at kung ano ang mga pangangailangan ng taong bayan. Alam ko kung talagang umaabot ang serbisyo ng mga ahensya ng national government at ng mga mamayan sa ating mga LGUs. At kung tunay ba talagang natutugunan ang mga pangangailangan ng taong bayan. It has been my mission, in fact, in the Senate. When we were first elected senators, the batch that I came in on in 2010, and the committee chairmanships were being chosen. I immediately, before anyone else could do it, jumped up and said, I would like to serve as committee chairman of local government, because I believe that local government is the key to our progress. As I keep reminding my colleagues in national government, without the hard work of our executives, our officials in local government, nothing of what we do in the national government will actually be felt by ordinary people, will actually reach them. And no matter how good our intentions are, if local government is not seen as a partner in the development of the country, then it is very difficult to succeed. I'm afraid that that is the road that we have gone down. And having been a great advocate of local government and the greatness of the potential that local government can provide, it has been a saddening development in our country now that we seem to think that only national government can provide, can help, can give the solution to the problems that people face. I disagree heartily, and I think that we have turned the actual process upside down. We should listen to local government. We should listen to people on the ground. They are, after all, the barangay officials are where, as the advertisement, I'm showing my age here, it is where government's rubber hits the road. That is where we actually are. They talk to people every day. They do not talk to politicians. They do not talk to legislators. They do not talk to government officials. They talk to ordinary citizens. And that way they know what is happening in their area. But I always remind my colleagues in government that yes, it is they who will outline and define and explain the problems. But as often as not, that they will also be able to give you a guide how to solve those problems. And that's why that partnership is extremely important. Sa aking palagay, magandang karanasan ang aking pagiging gobernador, vice-gobernador, at local executive na mamahanda ko sa mga responsibilidad ng isang vice-presidente. Sa aking palagay, mahalagang bagay kung naging babad ka at nakiisa sa taong bayan. Malaking bagay kung damang-dama ang tunay na hinaing at pangangailangan at ang mga hirap na patuloy na dinadanas at pinagdadaanan ng taong bayan sa kanilang sa kanilang mismong pamayanan. So with much pride and appreciation, I can claim that I can rely and count on my dual and extensive experience both as a legislator in Congress and in local government as an edge, perhaps an advantage over the other candidates. Kaya ang aking dalangin at ang aking panghiling ay iyong buo at taus-pusong pagtitiwala at pagsuporta para sa aking kandidatura. Sa aking pong paninilbihan sa bayan, tayo po ay magsanib puwersa at magtutulungan at pamahalaan at ang pribadong sektor sa pamamagitan ng mga Rotary Club sa buong Pilipinas at sa lahat ng mga organisasyon na ibinuo para tumulong sa taong bayan. Tayo ay magkaisa upang ayusin ang ating lipunan, paangatin ang ating ekonomiya at pagandahin ang buhay at kapakanan ng ating mga kababayan, lalo na ang mga nangangailangan. Again, I call on the Rotary Clubs to continue the work that you do, especially that which you do best and the ones with the greatest impact, with the best beneficial effect to our communities. Also, in your private and individual capacities and professional lives, always choose to live live by your oath, the Rotary ideals and the Rotary ethics. Most importantly, in the years ahead, we must be prepared and be ready to participate much more actively in much more active roles in our community improvement and our nation building in partnership with the government. The government cannot do this alone, and that is why I speak often of unity, because government must unite with every sector of our society if we are to succeed in this great cause that we have undertaken for our country. Marami pa tayong dapat gawin at trabahuin. Sa ganitong panahon talaga, kailangan doblehin ang pagod at hirap, lalo na kung nais natin makuha muli ang tiwala at suporta ng sambayan ng Pilipinas. Sa ating sunod na pagkikita, lalo na sa susunod na buwan, kung saan magsisimula na ang todo-todo ng pag-iikot sa buong bansa. Sana po ay ako'y inyong samahan at ako'y inyong suportahan. Kayo na po ang bahala sa akin. Mabuhay ang Rotary Club na lahat mga